Well, the webinar will last 1 hour and 30 minutes. Each presentation about the case studies will be followed by a poll for the audience participating. If you have any questions, write them in the comments and specify to whom the questions are directed. A dedicated Q&A session will be held at the end to address any questions that follow. Please keep your camera and Microsoft off. If the only person should have the camera on is the person doing the presentation. And should you have a stable internet connection and use a compatible browser for the best experience. Feel free to react or share your thoughts in the chat at all times. Each presentation will be timed, so the speakers will stay within their time slots. We want just to inform you that even after the webinar has been finalized, the questions will still be shared, and the audience can continue answering them even afterwards. We even have the first part of the webinar series. If you have missed it, it's up on our Digi4Live YouTube channel, and the link will be in the chat box. And now I would give the floor to Dr. Jarkko Niemi.
Okay, thank you, Dusan, for the introduction. So my name is Jarkko Niemi, and I'm a research professor at Luke, and I'm the coordinator of Digi4Live project. So the title of the project is Supporting the Potentials of Digital Data-Driven Solutions for Livestock Tracking. Next slide, please. So what is Digi4Live? Well, it's an EU-funded Horizon Europe coordination and support action that started last year, and the project helps the European livestock sector to leverage digital technologies and data. And it's coordinated by Natural Resources Institute Finland, and it contains 11 work packages, and we have 15 partners from different parts of Europe with different expertise. And in the project, we will employ quite strong multi-actor approach, which involves engaging different stakeholders and actors, and also implementing 6 case studies. And we will hear more about 3 of the case studies today. And in these case studies, data use concepts are created together with the actors. Next slide, please. So why are we implementing this project? Well, it's a coordination and support action. And that implies that there are some specificities. But overall, there are several points how we can improve livestock sector data and exploitation of new technologies in the livestock sector. And one could claim that data is the currency of the future. And we have also seen that there's lots of room for improving data harmonization, standardization, and interoperability of data and also technologies. And by doing this, we can benefit, and the livestock sector can benefit much more from the existing technologies and data sources. So there's also limited technology use, partly because of the reasons that I mentioned, and also there's an insufficiency of solutions for animal tracking, health, and policy monitoring. And with the project, we are aiming at providing some evidence about data-driven solutions and how they can be beneficial for the livestock sector. And also digital technologies can benefit administrative and policy processes. For example, artificial intelligence and data space are good for saving time and resources that are spent especially in routine tasks and, for instance, reporting. And of course, because of the nature of the project, boosting collaboration is really important. So next slide, please. So the ultimate goal of Digi4Live is to increase the capacity of livestock sector in Europe to benefit from data generating technologies. And can the person who has the speakers on or the microphone mute? Thank you. So in Digi4Live project, we will demonstrate how enhanced standardization, communication, and data exchange are, and also repurposed use of data, as well as use of digital technologies can benefit farmers, food and technology businesses, and also streamline public administration processes. And technologies and concepts that we are looking at include, for instance, data spaces, sensors, artificial intelligence, and data governance frameworks. And these are excellent also for to enable reliable and synergetic data sharing and use. And in the core of the project, we have 6 innovative case studies which are used to illustrate certain concepts. So we will hear more about those today. And some of the expected key results of the Digi4Live project include, besides the case studies that we are hearing more about today, an inventory of livestock tracking solutions, case study outputs, as I mentioned, better approaches to use AI in the livestock sector, policy recommendations and best practice guidelines, and also results concerning innovative governance models that ensure sustainability and resilience and data exploitation in the livestock sector. Next slide, please. So in the project, we are also setting up 4 thematic expert panels. You can see the titles on the screen. The idea behind the thematic expert panels is that we are engaging different stakeholders with specific expertise to tackle and to ponder specific issues that we are studying in the project. So if you are interested in joining one of the thematic expert panels, please visit our website and subscribe yourself to the panels. And the next slide. So then I will hand over to Matti. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jarkko. Hello, everybody. I'm Matti Pastel. I'm also a research professor at Luke, and as Dusan introduced, I'm leading the case studies work package and then also working with other parts of the project. Next slide, please. So as Jarkko explained, we have these case studies, and they are kind of a methodology in the project to develop this new digitalization concept. As the project is a coordination and support action, we are mainly, really looking at more at the conceptual level rather than in terms of products, which would be maybe the case for an innovation action. So last year we started the co-design of the case studies and with interviews of key stakeholders and analysis of the cases. And now we are working on the development, and then the key idea is to identify barriers and opportunities for each solution, really to engage with the stakeholders, develop a pilot of the concept, which can be a software or more like a conceptual thing, and then validate and conduct impact analysis in the end of the. So while we are implementing the case studies for each case study, we are also then collecting data for environmental and economic analysis later on in the project, and we have specified certain KPIs for each of the case studies. And one of the point of this webinars is to engage with you all, and you can provide us then data and feedback. Next slide, please. So the case studies have been chosen for certain application areas, and then across the case studies we are using different technologies. So we have case studies on animal health and welfare, resilience and transparency, animal tracking, AI tools, breeding, environmental analysis, and policy and administration. And then across the case studies, we all are related to sensor technologies. Then in some of the case studies, we use data spaces as a way to share data. AI is a key enabler in many areas, and we also have method development in the project. And then also data governance as an overarching topics. And we had the first webinar of the 3 case studies already earlier, which will appear in our YouTube channel, which you can see later on. And now we are then presenting 3 other case studies today, and today is a little bit more, let's say, technology focused than the previous webinar. So next slide. So yeah, let's start with the case study C, and I will give the floor to Clement and Dong. Thank you.
Thank you, Matti. Good morning, everyone. I'm Clement. I'm project manager at the French Livestock Institute. and I will present you the CSC, which is on robust AI methods for sensor-based animal tracking. We will present this case study with Dong, also from KU Leuven. And I will start, and he will continue with his use case. Next slide, please. So why are we working on this case study? For different reasons, but you might know that there is a very high development of PLF sensors on the field, on the farms. For instance, in France, we have at the moment more than 90% of the dairy farmers that are equipped with a kind of connected sensor. Concerning computer vision, it's a technology that is less on the field at the moment, less commercially available, but there is a very active research on this topic at the moment. And what we have noticed is that all these technologies are using predictive models to predict a kind of event or health problem or behavior or whatever. And these predictive models are often very sensitive to environmental conditions. So for video, for instance, the models can be affected by the light, by the angles of the camera, also by the color of the animals. And concerning the embedded sensors on the animals, could be the data frequency, the battery life, the network availability, or even the sensor position on the animal that can affect the performance of the algorithms. So there is a real need to challenge these AI predictive models in different environments. Next slide. To do this, we will use two complementary use cases. One on computer vision tracking on pigs that Dong will explain later, and the other one on sensor-based grazing traceability of dairy cows. Next slide. So the first one, the one on sensor-based grazing traceability of dairy cows, will be based on GPS collars, as you can see on the right of the slide, which is associated with an application that allow to track the animals outdoor and to calculate the time that they spent outdoor. We are doing this with 6 farmers at the moment that are involved they are all based in the north of France, in a production area where they produce maroilles cheese, which is a PDO cheese. So PDO means protected designation of origin. And to produce that cheese, they need to respect some specifications. So at least 170 days of grazing per year and at least 15 hours of grass per cow. But till now, this work is done manually or visually, not the work, sorry, the respect, the control, the audits to control that the farmers respect the specification is done manually or visually. And the idea is, of course, to automatize this grazing traceability, which is already done with the Chronopature tool. But we need to optimize the prediction robustness of this tool because it's very affected by the conditions. By conditions, I mean if the cows are milked by a robot or by a milking parlor, which will affect the access to the pasture, could be free or it could be restrained. The algorithms could be also affected by the distance between the barn and the paddocks that are grazed, and so on. And the last the last question and the last thing that we would like to do is to see if we can add some additional information or services to this grazing traceability. At the moment, the stakeholders that are involved are the farmers, the Maroilles Syndicate, which is the organization, the producer organization that are producing the Maroilles cheese, Savencia, which is a dairy factory, and Advanciel, who developed the tool. Next slide. So at this stage, what have we done? So of course, we have met the stakeholders because we need them to be engaged in the project. So we have met the farmers, we have met the different tool producer, milk factory, and so on, because we need to assess their needs to work on this process. We need to be aligned with what they need. So at the moment, we have also started the data acquisition on the 6 farms. We also have some historical GPS data on more than 20 farms if we need to use them. But first, we will start with these 6 farms. They are all in different producing conditions, as I already explained previously. So we have some GPS data, as you can see on the pictures, but we also have some reference data. So the all the paddock map, and also some reference data where the farmer writes when the cows are in or when they are out. Next slide. And so the ongoing work and expected outcomes for the work we expect to do in the next months. We will continue the data acquisition in these farms to get more data, and we'll start to analyze them to develop some models and optimize the grazing prediction. But we would like also to work on new KPI calculations to see what we can add to what is already done, which is only the grazing time at the moment and the number of hours grazed by the animals. So we would like to add some new KPIs. Concerning the outcomes, I already said it more or less, but what we would like to have at the end of the project is to have a very robust grazing time prediction tool working in all the environmental conditions that we have on the field. We would like to also to identify some needed improvements from the stakeholders, because we can improve, of course, the algorithms, but we can also improve the software, we can improve the hardware which is used and can be adapted. And would like to explore if there are some additional services that we can propose from this grazing monitoring. Next slide. I think I'm done. I will let Don continue the presentation of the case study concerning the computer vision.
Hello, thanks, Clement. Hello, everyone. My name is Dong. I'm from KU Leuven. We developed the pig tracking system. So as mentioned before by Clement, the computer vision system is very sensitive to different environment challenges. So you can see the picture on the top right. That's the vision system we developed in the lab. We can monitoring the location of the animal, their posture. We can track them. We can estimate their weight. Even the system was developed using the data over more than 30 different farms. But when we provide a service for another new environment, we see the system's performance is still not the optimal. So the reason is as mentioned before is because AI, especially computer vision, is very sensitive to the environment. So to deploy the technology across stakeholders, we have to collect data and label a lot of annotations to retrain the model. So in this project, we want to promote this process to see if we can develop a smart labeling way can significantly reduce the amount of data needed to retrain the model. To do that, we have stakeholder interactions. We complete the stakeholder mappings and finalize three stakeholders. They are EOVO Research Institute, DSM is a animal nutrition company, and the university to do heat stress monitoring. So we have set up the cameras in very different scenarios to get the representative data set, and now start develop the web application. So the web application can be hosted online, and the end users or the stakeholders can use our model as a backend to use our model to make prediction and manually correct the wrong predictions and then just click a button to fine tuning our model. So we want to easy the process of AI model deployment. Next slide, please. So the ongoing works, we are set up the camera systems in 3 stakeholders and keep generating new data set. And among this large scale data set, we want to create like tracking data set and behavior data set. So we hope the selected data set can be very representative to across different scenarios from the farm scene in the research institute and to the industry farm. And we also develop the labeling tool to design the workflow of pig tracking data set, because pig tracking, we have to label for every frame to give identity for every pig. That is a lot of, traditionally, it's a label intensive. And then we want to design a user-friendly interface and deploy our AI model as backend to facilitate this process. We also go to the literature. The smart labeling is only one of the approach can speed up the AI deployment. We also want to see the possibilities in the literature, like a topic called scene adaptation is a very hot topic in the AI generalization field. So we want to see some possibilities in the literature. So next slide, please. So the expected output, we want to finalize the smart labeling tool. So integrate this smart labeling tool with our current vision system. We will evaluate the performance to compare with the traditional way and give a report. And the benefit for the stakeholders, we want to improve the data annotation efficiency and make any vision systems easy to transfer from cross farms. And at the end of this case study, we aim to deploy the pig tracking system in more than 2 stakeholders. By this tool deployment, we want to report the best practical pathways in deploying AI for the pig tracking. And the benefit for stakeholders is that we can provide easy and robust AI approach for CV-based, computer vision-based pig tracking. So next slide, please. So this is the interaction section. The candidate can scan this QR code to participate our interaction section.
Yes, yeah.
So through this interaction section, we want to know what is the key indicators, either AI-based for tracking pigs or the sensor-based tracking for cows, which is the key indicator in your field.
The link is in the chat box if people are having difficulties having the QR code.
So I think maybe the candidate, the participant can also join our survey after the seminar or during the rest of the seminar.
I think there are some results, but maybe it's frozen. My colleagues say that they tested and it's not showing here. Or maybe we move to the next presentation, are we? You sure?
Yes, we can go to the next presentation. While still the viewers can answer the poll questions, and we can get back to it later.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Vasilis Anestis. I'm a postdoc researcher at the Agricultural University of Athens and a member of the group at the same university who's leading case study E, the data digitalization for environmental impact assessments using LCA. Next slide, please. So why this case study and what are the aims of this? The first aim is to develop user-friendly web-based farm-level primary data import templates for intensive pig and poultry farms for running life cycle assessments. And the second aim would be to develop a prototype software that uses this imported primary data to go one step further and derive farm-level life cycle inventory datasets. And this essentially would mean that we would try to facilitate the estimation of the environmental performance for products of intensive pig and poultry farms in compliance with the European Union Product Environmental Footprint Method. We can go to the next slide, please. What is the core focus of this case study in the context of this project? What we did already is that we performed a review of the primary data needs for applying life cycle analysis in intensive pig and poultry farming systems. And what we are currently doing is refine the data collection templates that we are developing and engage with stakeholders. And next, let's say, focus steps would be to develop the web-based architecture, web-based architecture based on these templates that we have developed, and finally develop and test a prototype software for farm-level data processing, and which provides lifecycle assessment dataset outputs. We can go to the next slide, please. So in your slides, you can see, let's say, the current form. We have developed some Excel, let's say, types of templates based on Microsoft Excel, which will be then, let's say, transported to web-based forms, web-based applications. So the first, in these two pictures, you can see, let's say, an introductory interface for pig breeders and chicken breeders, and the contents, let's say, of this type of Excel file for pig farms and pig breeders. We can go to the next slide, please. And these are, let's say, these are templates, data collection templates. It's not very well visible, but these are types of data collection templates for animal modules. So the animal data that is necessary, and the data with regards to the composition of the feeds that are also necessary for later running the assessments. We can go to the next slide, please. So what would be key insights for stakeholders, and what would be the achievement and case study and achievement of Digi4Live project goals? we would like for you to know that LCA, environmental LCA, is a method for estimating environmental sustainability and performance indicators, and is also used for promoting farm-level solutions to improve environmental sustainability of farming systems. And also, it facilitates the application. This case study, therefore, facilitates the application of this environmental life cycle assessment methodology in pig and poultry farming systems. And this is very well aligned with the project's objective to deliver elaborate and upscalable concepts that have a high potential for exploiting data and technologies for positive impacts on the sustainability, resilience, and transparency of livestock value chains. We can go to the next slide, please. So what would be the contribution of this case study work to a more sustainable future for European livestock production? The tools that we are developing contribute to the application of pig and poultry farming practices that mitigate negative environmental impacts. For example, greenhouse gas and ammonia emissions, water and soil pollution in the supply chain system, but also development and improvement of eco-friendly branding and labeling for the stakeholders involved in the pig and poultry product supply chains, trying to exploit the European Union product environmental footprint indicators. We can go to the next slide, please. So this is the first, let's say, interaction question that we have for you with title, how do you see the potential impact of this work on the operation of your organization with different, let's say, options, as you can see, for example, sustainability, compliance, resource optimization, eco-labeling means sustainability compliance means reduction of emissions, resource optimization means improvement of efficiency, for example, in material and energy use in livestock farms. And eco-labeling means strengthening of market position. Integration, automation, and digital solutions means possibly the potential for the tools that we are developing to integrate with existing and used on farm management softwares. Data-driven insights, methodology, and validation means that, for example, support for further LCA research or recommendations, provision of recommendations for policymakers and education, for example, via student courses. And finally, evidence-based policy regulation alignment, if you believe that it enhances sustainability regulations and helps in incentivization of farmers and other stakeholders in environmental protection, let's say. I don't know if we could move on, but the chat, the interaction session is open, of course, for you to reply to these questions. How can you, as stakeholders, contribute? We have tried to, let's say, separate per stakeholder, distinguish per stakeholder. For example, for farmers, cooperatives, and vertically integrated businesses, we would try to have or to get feedback from you on the data requested, types and quantity of this data. We'd like to share or you share farms' primary data using the data collection templates that will be provided, and pilot testing of the developed tools and feedback from your sites and suggestions, for example, for improving the user interface, allowing access on data already registered in other farm management software platforms for agreement with data entered to develop the data collection templates, promotion of the outcomes of this case study within their networks and gaining access, let's say, to larger farm-level data sets and enhancing robustness of the developed tools. For technology providers and software developers, sharing expertise would be excellent on technical issues regarding the developed tools, future collaboration for potential commercial exploitation for tools developed, and especially for software, LCA software developers, review of the developed tools and consider, let's say, potential collaboration. You can go to the next slide, please. For universities, research institutions, and consultants, participation in workshops and sharing expertise would be very nice, and validation of methodological approaches, promoting the outcomes of this case study within their networks, and exploit, let's say, the results of this case study to promote sustainable practices in pig and poultry production systems. And finally, for policymakers, participate in workshops and sharing expertise, provision of feedback on regulatory constraints, consult regarding the alignment of those tools with legal frameworks, and then finally, exploitation of the results of this case study for developing, let's say, animal product, food products, sustainability policies. Please, we can go to the next slide. What we see as benefits for the stakeholders via these case studies in general, the organization and digitalization of important material and energy inputs and production and waste output data at the farm level, leading potentially to a more sustainable farm management. This is the first one. The second one is that at the farm level, we could try to provide an estimation of greenhouse gas, ammonia, and other emissions. And finally, we provide software tools that can be used to examine practices for mitigation of farm level emissions, that drastically accelerate the LCA method and the environmental performance results, and facilitate the eco verification, potentially enhance eco labeling and eco branding using the EU FAU product environmental footprint compliant environmental impact assessment indicators. We can go to the next slide, please. And what would be the future influence? We think that the results of this case study could be influential as the datasets, the LCA datasets that will be developed can be used for first enhancing pig and poultry sustainable farm management. Second, quick derivation of environmental sustainability metrics for the systems using these tools, allowing comparison between years for the same system or with other systems using the tools. Potential application of practices that mitigate farm level emissions and improve system environmental performance, providing help in achieving the environmental sustainability goals of livestock sectors at the country level. And finally, potentially establishing subsidy criteria by policymakers based on the emission outflows, environmental performance of pig and poultry farming systems. We can go to the next slide, please. What we see as next steps, especially for us, engagement of farmers and vertically integrated pig and poultry farming businesses is crucial in the context of the project within the framework. So we will be engaging, I think, the stakeholders for the total project duration, but we expect to perform and complete this main engagement work until this June, let's say. And what we will also expect is to receive is feedback on data collection templates and pilot testing in the following months, and also pilot testing of the prototype software results until later on December, let's say 2026, that this case study will be, let's say, more developed. We can go to the next slide, please. So what follows is the final, let's say, three questions, if I remember well, with regards to this case study. So in what ways would your organization be interested in enhancing the results of this case study and contribute to a potential upscaling? So you see different options. So for example, pilot testing and data sharing, awareness building, tool enhancement and system integration, validation, dissemination, new research, regulatory application incentives development, or other. You could please explain. So we can leave some time here. But no, maybe we can move to the next question and people can still reply. What are the specific challenges that you foresee in implementing this case study and exploiting its results? For example, data collection and accuracy, the engagement of stakeholders, regulatory hurdles, system integration, cost and technical barriers, or other you could explain in the chat. Okay, thank you so much. Maybe we can move also to the final one, I think. What specific opportunities do you foresee in implementing this case study and exploiting its results? For example, eco-labeling and market advantages, efficiency and cost reduction, policy influence, collaboration and innovation, or other, you could also explain in the chat. Okay, thank you very much. Dusan, what do you think? Can we proceed with the procedure and the next presentation? And yeah, of course, people can still reply.
Yes, we will continue with the next presentation, and afterwards we will go back to the questions if it's needed more for that. So now we will we will give the floor to Professor Dr. Matti Pastel.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, just about the questions. So we have Q&A session in the end of the webinar, and I will be moderating it. But so feel free also if you already have questions that you want to raise in the discussion. Of course, you can ask it during the Q&A, but you can already write it in the chat beforehand to make sure your question gets addressed. So the final case study that we are presenting today is this policy monitoring, policy impact and administration, and because it's a digitalization project on how we can use the digital tools in this area. The partners in this case study is us and Luke, Finnish Food Authority as a public authority handling these matters in Finland, and then we have VTT, which is a Technology Research Institute. This is like in the first part, and then we evaluate it with the other partners on how the concept is valid to other countries. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so the aim is that we try to see how we can connect multiple data sources, and meaning existing on-farm data sources from cattle production in a way that we could reduce the resources both from the farmers and then on the public administration side. Obviously, there is, let's say, an increasing pressure to collect more and more data from the farmers, and they already have quite heavy reporting. And then on the other hand, the public administration also needs to spend quite a lot of money for monitoring of all of these policies, and streamlining it from both sides is of great interest. We approach this now from the data space perspective, so how we can use the data space technologies that are emerging in Europe and heavily driven by Commission to see how this is applicable to digitalization, because we've seen that, okay, there are not so many projects actually in the livestock area working on this topic. And as a concept, then we are looking in going further to use of this digital product passport concept in combining the data that we can collect and looking then evaluating how this would apply to administration and also for instance, in the future to outcome-based policy monitoring. And then demonstrate these results to the audience. So next slide, please. If we look at the EU Commission did this survey on state-of-the-art of data recording related to the common agricultural policy. And this is down divided to different categories. And we see that still the most common way of recording is manual recording. And this could be now paper-based or then kind of farmer-specific spreadsheet. So doesn't mean always pen and paper. It can also be computer. Then the second next one is the use of management software. And then the last one is the use of automatic recording. And then the use of automatic recording is very low. And still we know that, for instance, for animal welfare, actually the prevalence of sensors in many countries is much higher, but that is given in the studies. But they are actually, of course, not able to use it currently for CAP monitoring. So sensors are used very little, but they could be used a lot more. And actually, in fact, in a way, let's say the minimum requirement for the data to be available to some kind of a data spaces concept would be to have this management software. So there's still a lot of need to increase also where the data is, the manually entered data is recorded. Next one, please. So the background for this work is, in many ways, this European strategy for data, which was the infographic from a couple of years ago. And in Europe aims to get these benefits where data can be accessed by the user, so to prevent the lock-in of data. And the Data Act that has now been accepted is kind of the key here to say that, okay, the manufacturers need to provide access to the users to the raw data. So at the moment, the farmers cannot access the data from all of the sensors that they buy. But then in the future, this will become a requirement, and we expect that kind of very soon there will be broader availability of the data because it is mandated by the legislation. And then the concept related to this is that the Commission wants to initially set out to have 10 common European common data spaces for different sectors. Agriculture is one of the sectors where the aim is to have this data space that can be used to share data between the actors. And then the aim is also that then the data spaces, they will not only be sector specific, but you could connect from the agriculture data space data fluently to, for instance, to the mobility data space, which could be tracking the logistics of the food transport, for instance. And next slide, please. So the concept of the common European data spaces, I think this is mainly to do with what it enables. There is a lot of data standards in background. There's IDSA and Gaia-X standards behind, and if you've seen data spaces presentations, sometimes they focus a lot on those standards. I think from the point of view of the user and the farmer, it is enabling technology, so it is very important for the data providers, the technology providers and companies and the data intermediary services to focus on the technical aspect. But I think if we are the users, we should understand that the idea here is that once these kind of technologies are in place, they can enable the trustworthy and secure data sharing. And trustworthy means in a way that you don't need to actually trust the participant, but you can trust that the data space provides you legally enforceable contracts and ways to decide the principle of sovereignty that says that, okay, then now, for instance, a farmer needs to be able to decide who can access their data, and then the data space software and services will enable to do this easily technically. And this is kind of a future vision. It is not a reality yet, but we have the first commercial services and we are working towards this direction. So, you have identified participants, you have legal ways to kind of address misuse of data, so that makes the system trustworthy, that you can trust that when you share data, and if somebody misuses your data, you can be compensated. So trustworthy doesn't mean that you need to know and trust all of the participants. It means you have technology to enforce this trust. And this will expected to bring then benefits to businesses, public administration, and then also all of the individuals. So you often see these words of this fair, transparent, and trustworthy related to the data spaces, and they are kind of course, some part of those are laid out in the legislation, and then the other parts, I mean, they are then some people looking at how to best implement that in software, and these are now, I think, quite close to being implemented in a broader scale, and let's say we will have the technologies how to technically share it, but it's up to us in the livestock sector then to decide what is the data and how that is described and standardized, and all these kind of important things are actually up to the users of the data space. So you could think about it as where you have a teleoperator that is kind of managing your mobile phone network, but it doesn't control what kind of messages you send and so on. So next slide, please. Then the other concept that is now more generally in digitalization, it is emerging these digital product passports. And this is mainly now, I think, originating from way of looking at the circularity of raw materials. But it is anyway a way of bringing, I mean, collecting data on product sustainability, I mean, being able to track the origin of the raw materials and safety, and then also to track in certain sectors the amount of how those materials are being recycled. But then going after this concept of bringing all of the relevant data together, we have been thinking about, okay, what could be the same, or if we had a digital product passport for cattle, what could it then contain? And now the aim is that we are looking at, okay, how could we track the sustainability metrics of individual animals over the lifetime? Because at the moment, a lot of the things are being tracked at the farm level, and then if the animal is transported to another farm, you will lose all of the information. And in the product passport, the concept, the data would travel with the animal. Next slide, please. So we have identified some data sources. So this includes, I mean, these just the key ones, but to give you an idea what all you could get from a modern dairy farm. So obviously you have the milking robot and the milking systems, and then it is not, especially in the milking robot, you have a lot of information in how the cows are moving in the barn. You have some information on the feeding, you could have information on pasture use, and then obviously milk production, but also milk quality related data. Quite many farms would have feeding data. This is a little bit more, I think, heterogeneous on how, for instance, the feeding wagons collect data and what kind of software, but there are a lot of farms that already have this data. I mean, either as the self-propelled or tractor-pulled or robotic feeders. On animal health, we have several type of activity sensors, milk sensors, body condition sensing. And then on the feed production, the farms actually have quite detailed records that they also need to keep for subsidy reporting purposes on how much of feed they are producing on different field and on what kind of inputs. Of course, this is also then varying how precisely the farmers are measuring it, but at least the estimated yields are there. Which could then be connected to at least the groups at the farm to monitor the feed intake. And then we have several official registries that we are looking at. Next slide, please. So we tried to make a drawing an infographic of the digital product passport catalog showing the basic ideas and the key data sources. So as I said, we have some farming basic farm information. It's usually also in the official registries, but the farmers could have additional information that could be useful. We have some kind of data on feeding from most farm, the milking systems, the field managements, and cattle register, and all of these are now separate. And what we will do is to pilot of connecting these to this data space. So we'll have a technical implementation of data space by VTT, and then us from LukeArc looking into how the different data sources could be connected. Will be technically be done that there are like existing APIs, and then those are kind of used to connect to data space and then demonstrate this permission management and the multi-use of data, so we can have the data sources, which we will implement at least the milking system and the farm information system, and then see with the partners if we can implement more to connect to the data space that we enable to access to all of these data sources. Then we see how this could be used to, especially in terms of the key data indicators, to collect this digital product passport. And then we will implement some of those outcome like potential use cases, but mainly the focus is on what kind of data can we get for greenhouse gas inventories or LCA. We will not be able to do obviously a whole national inventories based on the data set, but we are able to for the use cases to map what are the data needs and then see what is already existing and what is missing. What can we do at farm level? What can we do at the animal level? And what kind of data could be then used to track the animal, and at what resolution do we want to keep all of the daily data for each of the animals, or are we using some kind of aggregate measures over the lifetime? And so that is the concept. Next slide, please. So once we have been implementing or managed to implement this pilot, we want then to estimate, let's say, the economic benefits and also costs for kind of the systems. And we try to estimate now based on well, interviews and some case farms. Well, obviously, once this, I think there will be some operational services and already are in some countries. We can look at what's the fee, what's the benefit, and then if additional revenue possibilities exist. There are key part in the data space is to have this data intermediary services, and the first ones are operational, and we can then see what their fees are, and then to see if, okay, can we collect some information on what's the implementation costs. There are some estimates for the European, and then also to see maybe what's the development cost and integration of the companies. So obviously the farmers cannot implement this data sharing before the companies providing the sensors or the backend systems will also do some work. And we will be collecting for environmental assessment. Mainly we will be looking at what is the additional burden to environment from all of this digital infrastructure. And this we will be able to do with our pilot data space software, and we can estimate the amount of traffic in different use cases and the number of services running and the data storage. And then based on that information, we can make kind of a digital footprint calculation of the data space, at least at the level of Finland and maybe at a broader level as well. Next slide, please. So in the end, like what's the concrete deliverables? So we have this specification for digital product passport that we will publish, and also with an example database structure. We will provide a mapping of the existing on-farm datasets to sustainability indicators, also trying then into looking at not only the availability, but also the quality, and also trying to collaborate with, for instance, the LCA case study here. We are now working on how the milking robot data would be connected. So we'll provide a demonstration on using an ICAR ADE compatible API, to connection to IDSA standard compatible data space connector, and how that will be working. And then the next step is to look at then this on-field feed production data and maybe even further data sources, but at least at the API level. And then all of this is now implemented in open source components so that we can provide demonstration and test environment also to companies trying to see how to expose their own datasets to data space. And on the other hand, for instance, for app providers who want already see how they can use the data that maybe in the near future will be available from the milking robot services under the new regulation. Next slide, please. And okay, it's not as specific as for Vasilis, but you can contribute and you can also come up with new ways. And for instance, if you have data sources that we have missed, or you have something that you would like to provide where you have on-farm data, obviously in collaboration with the farmers, that could be joined to data space, very interesting to hear. Also, if you are, for instance, a service provider and have a software like an LCA or some other sustainability tool where we could connect from the on-farm data through the data space, that would be very interesting. So basically, if you have an API that you think that we could use through the data space, please be in touch. And then also providing feedback on the concept. So the concept is now mainly in the webinars and thematic expert panels. And next year we will have some releases of the open source software, and then you can test the software and then provide feedback on the functionality as well. And the next slide. Okay, so, and then we have a questionnaire, and then we move the Q&A. So while you are responding to this one, to seeing what would you think would be the most interesting data sources, but broader for sustainability or more specifically for policy. And now we are also then moving to the Q&A session to all of the case study or the project in general. So please vote, and then also think of questions, and you can either I think you raise your hand or type in the chat to questions to me or Jarkko or any of the other case studies. Let's wait for a little while if we are getting some results here. Okay, yeah, we have also a question in the chat about is the reason that my only indicator for animal health is antibiotic use. So this is like, I have to, which I forgot to say, so the digital product passport, this is now the first draft and mock-up, and definitely you can suggest additional indicators. So antibiotic use is not the only indicator that we are looking at for animal health. It is just something now we had as an example. And if you have good data sources or indicators to suggest for this other things, definitely you can suggest them. Okay, we have grazing data, which is nice, and we actually will also be collaborating now in this data space with what Clement was presenting and try to connect the grazing data. So that is, I think, definitely scope for the project. So yeah, but now moving to questions and answers, I think we can keep this slide open and you can keep voting. Do you have any questions from the audience to the speakers? If we don't have, I think everybody should be able to raise the hand or open the microphone. If you can't, at least write in the chat. I will start. Do we have something?
Yes, we have in the chat, Matti.
Yeah, I think I tried to address this one. Yeah, but okay, so we don't. So there is a follow-up questions on which specific health indicators we are looking at. I don't have a full list now. So we are looking at mainly what's the content in the data spaces of the recording of the health. And this indicates we would have also like records of mastitis and lameness, but we have not specifically decided how that should be aggregated at the product passport level. I think there are very many ways on how to do that, whether you look at it from the welfare perspective or something else. But the Finnish Food Authority is in the case study also then looking at this more from the public authority side and this, let's say, more even like the infectious disease management and these kind of topics. But I cannot tell you exactly. If you think something is, Diana, very important to include, you can send me an email as well. Okay, thanks. So I will start. If we don't have anything from the audience, I have some questions for the speakers. and then people can comment if you want. So can maybe Clemon and Dong and Vasilis, if you think you can open the cameras, we can have a bit of discussion at least. I think I will start with a question to Dong on this. As you said, you have 30 farms, which is unusually large number, I think, for computer vision study, definitely. And then I was wondering that you still need to train for additional farms. So do you have an idea at how many farms do you need to have before the need of retraining goes away? Or is it something that you will always need to do for additional environments?
If you compare with other domain like self-driving, that they might train on millions, billions of data, that's something not available in our field. I don't know if it's possible if we can have like million or billions of data train a model that's then we can deliver the AI solution without fine tuning anymore. I'm not sure. We have no resources to do that work. But so far, we see even we trained on 30, 40 different environments. When we do another new environment, it's still not optimal. We still need to go through the data annotation and the fine-tuning procedures.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think this is a very interesting point. And then we have a question from Side, who is asking that how data standardization could be taken into consideration as well. And maybe Dong, Clement, you could all maybe describe of how do you see the standardization in terms of your case study? Is it a relevant question for you?
Maybe I can answer from point of computer vision. That's my first question when I do my PhD. I ask my supervisor, can we standardize the house, the facility? Then the AI can work everywhere. Then you have to work with the producer, like the fence producer. It sounds reasonable, but in practical, it's not realistic. I would say we have to design the vision system that's as robust as possible to across different environments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. How about from point of view of grazing?
Yeah, from our side, I would say that the question of standardization contains different aspects. First, we need to define what is grazing. What do we consider as grazing? The definition of this behavior. Then, in our case study, the goal is to calculate the number of hours grazed per cow per day, and the number of days grazed per year. So we also need to standardize maybe or to define what is grazing day. How many hours do we need to count it as a day? So these are the first things that we will have to discuss. And then, of course, there is the matter of the format of the data, the frequency, and so on. So these, I don't have the answer right now, but of course, these are things that we need to discuss within the project to trying to make these the most replicable possible if we want to go in another in other countries with other kind of applications and so on. Trying to have all the same way to do this.
Okay, thank you. Vasilis, do you want to comment on the standards?
Yes, standardization is very important for performing environmental assessments. It's, I mean, if you do not have standardized procedures in calculating, in collecting data and calculating, let's say, emissions, you cannot compare. So it's something that it is really has been taken into account already for a lot of years for in the LCA, let's say, community. So, and the last years, for example, the European Commission suggests the European Union product environmental footprint method in order to, let's say, promote this standardization in life cycle assessments. And that's why we would try to follow, let's say, these guidelines in this case study.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I also, I mean, in points of the data spaces, I think there's a lot of standardization need now in agriculture if we want to make the data spaces successful, because we need to standardize, well, the measurements, but also then all of the messages that go in, I mean, that are transported. If we want to provide a data set for LCA calculation, for instance, from dairy farms, we have to standardize the message across the different manufacturers, otherwise we don't get the full benefits. And I think there is a lot of ongoing work here as well. And in broader in the project, we also have ICAR as a partner, and we have a separate tasks in the project where we are looking at the standardization and trying to collaborate with the working groups. But definitely there is a lot of need for, I mean, standardization in terms of the data transfer and but like what we are using is there is already luckily a lot of work background. So we are using like this ICAR animal data exchange standards for milking robot data that has already been developed, and it does include some standardized messages also for feed and activity production. But of course, we are not companies, so we are not making the actual standards, but we can make suggestions and support the working groups. Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, Matti, as you said, this is very, of course, it's very important data standardization, data collection, because otherwise, yeah, you, especially in LCA, also in LCAs and the LCA data collection, because if you do not standardize the procedures, you do not know if what you are doing is correct or what you are measuring is correct. So it's important to have a view of the validity, let's say, of what you are collecting, right? So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. So Diana is asking about how will we ensure that the digital product passport will survive after the project. And well, I mean, we do not plan to maintain it as a state research institute. We are collaborating with the public authorities, and the idea is that we'll now propose the concept. And indeed, if once the agricultural data space is proceeding, we can see if there will be parts, and as it will be an open solution, I think there can be companies definitely can implement it commercially. Or the other idea could be that some of this data could go into the traces systems of EU, and we have another case study in traces. If it's to see it by the public authorities that is beneficial for monitoring, and you want to make some kind of, let's say, more detailed linking of information of animal data, it could also become a tool for let's say, for the public authorities. But yeah, now we are promoting it and of course discussing to other partners and making the findings available. But this is not a project where we make commercial products that much, but more the concepts that can be then adopted by different stakeholders. I don't see more questions now from the chat, but I'm sure Dusan let me know if I missed something. I was wondering, Vasilis, in your voting, I think the main concern for the LCA data was this, what's the collection accuracy? And I guess a lot of this data will be now farmer self-reported. How can you ensure that, let's say, there is not a hope or tendency to under-report some of the emissions in the hope for better sustainability score or these kind of things?
This is a really good question. Actually, the first thing that you need to do is to trust that the farmer is providing correct answers. But of course, you really need to try and go to a validation procedure of the data that is taken by the farmer. For example, if you run assessments, if you then they'll calculate the greenhouse gas emissions with the data. Then you see, am I close to the literature? Am I not? Does it make sense from an animal production point of view? What data have been for the breeding, for the animal breeds? Is the yield correct? Is it not? So, I mean, this is, does it make sense? So you have to try and go to this procedure of, let's say, validating or try to validate the data or examine if the data that is received is correct. And of course, this digitalization, let's say, procedure that we are working in this project will help we hope that will help in receiving robust data and correct data for these assessments.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's actually a key question also. I mean, for all of the digital, it is not only the farmer reported, but we know that the sensors can have biases and lack of calibration and issues. And yeah, one challenge for the digital product passport as well, as I said, we try to evaluate. I lost a picture of Clemon. I wanted to ask still about the grazing, and then this you mentioned, okay, as we have defined in the project, this evaluation of robustness is very important. Can you a little bit elaborate how we can assess the robustness? Like this, a little bit the same as for DONG, but for a different type of sensor. And do you think you can trust with the data trained on 6 farms that you get a robust solution for the remaining farms, or do you still need additional testing?
Actually, we have 6 farms in the project, but this work on the grazing traceability is something that we are working on for now, I would say 5 or 6 years. So we have already done a lot of things on more farms. And what we are going to do is to collect reference data from the farmers, because we need their inputs to know if effectively the cows are inside or outside. And we will try to optimize the algorithms that we have already developed by taking in account this additional data, the inputs from the farmers with different conditions. Today, the system is working quite well to predict the time spent outside by the cows, but there are still some mistakes because of the precision of the GPS, which is quite low actually. It's, let's say, 10 meters to 50 meters, depending if the cows are inside or outside. And there are plenty of ways to correct the unprecision of the GPS data, depending on the previous location of the animal and so on. I cannot enter too much into the details, but most of the work will be to correct actually the bad positions and the bad affectation of one animal in one paddock. As the paddock is close to each other, sometimes the points are not positioned in the good one. And we will try to test different kind of models to correct that kind of problems. Most of the bad estimation are caused by this unprecision of GPS data that I think we can correct by different methodologies, depending on the previous and the next points, for instance, or depending on the track, I would say, of the cow, yeah, to correct this trajectory.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So we have one more from the audience. It's related about the project working outside of the EU. I don't know, Jarkko, do you want to take that one? I can say from the side of the case studies that obviously we are working with technologies and some of them are used globally. And of course, we are happy to see impact outside of the EU, but mainly the case study scope is within the European project, but we are happy to interact. But I don't know, Jarkko, do you want to give a broader idea? Still have Jarkko online. Well, but yeah, so overall, okay, so it's a follow-up question that any future plan for expanding in Africa, and I think this is an interesting idea. Obviously, the way the European project work is that we have a set of funding for the activities that we have promised to do in the proposal. So I think many of us would be also interested in doing work in Africa, and I think some of the partners are doing, but we would need to have a suitable funding instrument in order to do it. So like within the scope of the project, we cannot expand on what we have already agreed with the Commission to do with the set of funding, but certainly we can exchange ideas, and if you have future funding opportunities, I think why not? If you others want to comment, I don't know. I think there's a lot of interest globally in getting access to the data, and this data space is now a concept being proposed in Europe. You have maybe a little bit different ideas around the world, but we will then see what is the winning idea, and definitely we need to have interoperability of the data between the continents, because we have a lot of trade as well, and this, especially EU, is requiring quite a lot of let's say traceability information, I think, in the future also from the countries exporting to Europe. I think it's been a really good webinar. If we don't have any further questions, I think we can close, and really thank to the speakers.
Yes, can we just have the last slide, please? Put up. We can. Well, again, thank you, Matti, for keeping up the Q&A session. I would once again want to thank you, all of our speakers. So Vasilios, Donk, Aline, thank you, and Matti, thank you for being part of the webinar, and thank you to the audience for joining us and in this, let's say, fruitful discussion. So we will have the webinar on our YouTube channel in the upcoming days. So if you miss any parts, we would want to revise it. It will be available. Please visit our project website. We'll put the link in the chat. You can find more information about what are our goals and what we want to achieve in the EU livestock sector. You will find even the stakeholder engagement part if you want to continue. With us the work that we are doing, and of course follow us on our social media channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Once again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we can finish here.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dusan. Thanks a lot, everybody, for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.